We've been focusing so hard on the playoffs and the relegation zone. Let's have a look at those teams that are probably going to be in the Championship next season. Welcome to Championship 365. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Championship 365, our weekly collaboration between myself, Benjamin Bloom, the Second Tier podcast, and the great Ben HD. Ryan, representing the Second Tier. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, thank you. Although Ben HD is the great Ben HD.
Yeah,
you're not the great Second Tier. Just saying.
You know, I immediately regretted that, and I thought that's unfair, isn't it? So, you're exactly equally as great as.
Cheers, mate. Cheers, mate.
Ben HD. Is your ego inflated or bruised by that, Ben?
No, I'll take it.
We are going to have a look, because we've been so obsessed over recent weeks with playoffs and with relegation. I feel like we've done that to death, and we've just got to let the damn thing play out now. We were talking just before we started. You mentioned it, Ryan. What about the teams that are pretty certain to be in the Championship next season, and what's that going to look like for them? Obviously, there's going to be a lot of moving parts in terms of, a Rotherham, Wigan, MK, Sheffield Wednesday. Who's going to be joining us? Norwich, probably. Watford, quite probably. Burnley, maybe. Everton. Oh, my God. So we don't know anything about that. But let me just take a little straw poll. Ryan, where do you consider that the beach, in terms of a team that's not really in the playoff challenge or in the relegation challenge, where do you consider at the moment that begins and ends? Who's definitely in the Championship next season?
I'd say definitely 100% in the Championship next season. You're looking at Preston to Birmingham. And then if I'm willing to branch out slightly more to the teams, I'd say are very, very likely to be in the Championship next season, I'd go from Coventry down to Hull. Mainly because I struggle to see those teams getting involved in the relegation battle or the playoffs for various different reasons.
What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with that, really. I think what I was going to say was probably going to be Coventry down to Hull. I think that maybe if there's a massive, run that comes out of nowhere for either Coventry or West Brom to maybe have a semblance of a challenge for the top six. But I think that the likelihood is we're probably looking at that sort of spot from like 11th to 20th, maybe with one or two moving parts in between.
Yeah, I think I'm with you both. There's just that thing with West Brom and that squad that they could do something, but we'll go on and talk about them in a second. So, Ryan, Coventry, I think we'd all agree next season could well be in a good place. And we need to preface this conversation by saying it's not a bad thing to sell and work the transfer market. And obviously, there's a couple of saleable assets there. And Callum O'Hare signed a new deal, didn't he? Gyökeres kind of scores a lot, then stops, and then scores a lot. And I think Gus Hamer's the guy that might be the one. But do you see Coventry pushing on next season?
Well, they've followed quite a similar path to Luton in a way, haven't they? In the way that they have obviously come from League Two, come into the Championship after blitzing League One, and then their first season in the Championship, survived relegation, mid-table this season, playoff push potentially next season if they do tread that same path as Luton. So yeah, I think they've definitely got a chance. I don't think we'll see a completely different Coventry side to the one we've had this season. The players that you mentioned there, Callum O'Hare has obviously signed a new deal, but Gus Hamer has as well. And he's probably the one who would be the most likely to go. But if he has signed a new deal, it looks like he's going to be sticking around. So I don't think there's anyone in there who I can particularly see leaving. I think they need to replace Ian Martson, someone I've been very impressed with across the course of the season. I think he's a fantastic talent. I'll be surprised if they get him back. But getting in another left back, getting in a striker as well, Matty Godden, if he stays 100% fit, would be a solid Championship striker, but he's just not always 100% fit. And Gyökeres, as you mentioned, has blown hot and cold across the course of the season. So there's definitely areas that they can strengthen, but Coventry have shown that they know how to recruit players. They're not willing to look abroad. They're also willing to look abroad, is what I should say, as well. So yeah, I think they can definitely have a better season than they've had this season, which is an unbelievable season in itself.
Agreed. Bit of a more tricky one for you, Ben, is West Brom, who will transition from a year one parachute team to a year two parachute team. Bruce will then, we would likely think, start his first full season. We've been pretty much saying Sam Johnston's contract will run down right from the start of the season. Otherwise, in terms of those saleable assets, would another Premier League team look at, or a parachute team coming down, look at a Carlin Grant maybe, or someone like that? Or would the higher ups at West Brom give Brucey some money and go, look, we've only got 2 years parachute payments here, please get us promoted?
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to come on to, really, because I think that next season is quite pivotal for West Brom, that they are back within that conversation for promotion, really, because we're likely to get 3 strong sides that are going to be coming down from the Premier League next season. And if West Brom aren't up there competing with them, it can get to a stage where, you get into year 3 of that parachute money. If, you're still sort of treading water in mid-table like we've seen with, I don't know, say a Stoke or someone, by the time that runs out and you get further in, it gets harder year upon year. It does feel like there is a little bit of a refresh of that squad that is needed, to be honest. Obviously, there are those saleable assets who, maybe they're wanting to keep around, but the likes of, the Livermores, the Kyle Bartley, some of the old sort of older guard there, feels like a bit of a refresh is needed within that squad there. And I'm still not sure whether Bruce is the right man to fully commit to a long-term project for West Brom moving forward, but it does feel like next season is really pivotal for them. Get Daryl DK back as long as he stays next season, get him back to full fitness, and who knows. But yeah, next season is going to be pretty crucial for West Brom for me.
Ben, what is Albert El Mohammadi up to? Ahmed.
Yeah, get the band back together.
Get him in there. Fun. Albert. I was thinking of Albert Adoma then. That's probably quite a good Brucey signing anyway, isn't it? But there you go. What about Blackpool? You're getting all the positive ones here, Ryan, because there's an argument for Blackpool to move on. I know you guys on Second Tier are very high on Neil Critchell. I think anyone who's seen what he's done at Blackpool is kind of very high on him. And they've got this kind of old school 4-4-2 look, and they're quite powerful at home, aren't they? Are they possibly become a top half team next season?
I'm very
this season, by the way, of course. Sorry, Ryan.
Oh, yeah, they could definitely do it this season. I'm very interested to see how Blackpool do next season. Critchley is a marvellous manager, someone I rate so highly. And it's quite tricky, really, to see how they'll do next season. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but we had them to go down at the start of the season just because we were looking at their recruitment and thinking, have they really signed well enough? But it turns out they had. Every player there performed higher than their expectations, and we'll probably have to do that again. I think they'll do well to hold on to Josh Bowler. I think he's someone I'll be very surprised to see in a Blackpool shirt next season, just because he's played so well this season and is attracting a lot of interest from top Championship sides. But they've shown that they can recruit, and they're very savvy with their recruitment at the same time. So, yeah, I Blackpool is such a hard side to really nail down how they'll do next season. I think top half would probably be the aim, whether they finish in top half again this season or not. So, yeah, I think they'll definitely be heading into next season full of positives, and they're certainly in a better position than a lot of the teams who are finishing below them this season.
I totally agree with you on Bowler, Ryan. There could be the most right-sided Championship player summer mentalness that we thought might happen in January. If Forest don't go up and Brendan Johnson goes to the Premier League, and then there's Keane Lewis-Potter and Jed Wallace is out of contract and Chris Willock is very good, and they all seem to play down the right-hand side for their sides as well. So, yeah, a Bowler is definitely in that conversation. Lo and behold, Ben HD gets to talk about Preston. Ryan, who would have thunk it? Hey?
It's almost like we planned it.
Where are they headed? We like Ryan Lowe, don't we? Ben, can they get back towards the those really good finishes? First one under Alex Neil.
Yeah, I think ultimately that's the aim for Preston. It does feel like there will be quite a few moving parts going on at North End over the summer, really. I think that what next season is really going to come down to, because there is this sort of feel-good factor around Preston. It sort of feels like maybe even this season was a little bit of a missed opportunity. Had we had Ryan Lowe from the start of the season, what was sort of achievable for us? But I think that North End next season, it's all going to come down to recruitment, because I think there will be quite a few moving parts with Preston. I think arguably our 3 best players this season have been, each of our loanees. You probably can't throw Archer into that, but the impact that he's sort of had since January. But Sepp van den Berg, Daniel Iverson and Cameron Archer, I think we do really well to get any of them back next season, to be honest. So I'm hopeful that we sort of learned from how we've been burnt a little bit over the past few windows in terms of how we've recruited, and we'll sort of revert back to type like we did at the start of the window as well. But it's a bit of an unknown with Preston at the moment, to be honest, because there's a potential takeover which is in the air at the moment with Preston. So we'll wait and see what happens with that one. And could really go either way. But there is definitely this sort of feel-good factor around Preston and Ryan Lowe at the moment that I think that we should look to capitalise on over the summer.
I've just seen who's coming up next, Ryan. Good luck with this one. So Stoke, we don't know what Stoke is going to look like next season. I dare say, and I very much like Michael O'Neill, and I thought he did a great the first season when he replaced Nathan Jones. He got them travelling in the right direction. But I really feel if they're not above 15th where they are at the moment, I don't think he'll be there next season. I think that could change. It looks like the owners are prepared to swallow the losses, and I don't know. Will there be conversations going on? Well, we know there'll be conversations going on with the EFL right now. Will that transpire into anything next season? I don't suspect they'll be worse off squad wise, but it's just been a slog for poor old Stoke fans the last 3 seasons, Ryan. And I've got them gloriously wrong and much lower than I thought they were going to be every time. What about next season?
Well, they've been the big underachievers this season, haven't they? And whether they stick or twist with O'Neill is going to be the big question, isn't it? I'd like to see him stay on. I think he's a good manager and he's been really hard done by injuries this season. And you've got to keep in mind when he had a fully fit squad, which he hopefully will do next season, they were a very good side, weren't they? The first, yeah, exactly. They're in the first third of the season, certainly. They were fabulous. So next season, hopefully they'll have the likes of Harry Soos back. I've seen that he's back in training and probably won't play this season, but he's back in training anyway. So he'll be back and he's such an important player for them. He's probably their most important player, actually. Nick Powell, he's out of contract. I think he has got an extra year option, so he probably will hang around for at least another season. Tyrese Campbell needs to get back in form as well. But at the same time, Stoke are one of these sides who may be looking to chop their wage bill up by quite a bit because there are a few high earners there who aren't really doing too much. So Stoke are a really interesting one. I don't think they'll have much money in terms of, splashing out and bringing in new additions as well. So they may have to look towards the loan market again, which they pretty much did during January, or looking towards the free agent market as well. But there's certainly some foundations there for them to have a decent crack at the playoffs next season. I think a lot of it will depend on how they're looking in August, though.
It's so interesting you talk about that third of the season. I did a bit for Football 365. I think Ben's seen it, actually. The numbers, if they'd kept, I think it was 1.7 was the points per game from game 1 to 18. If they'd kept that up, they'd be third right now. So that's, and they're sort of dropped off by a factor of, 2 points to 1. And it's been relegation form since then.
At which point was that from when Harry Soos got injured?
Probably it was like game 19 or something. Yeah, so they were right up there. But hey, it is what it is. Go on then, Ben. Swansea, Russ Martin, possession ball, season 2 of Joel Pirro and Flynn Downs. Are you trending up with this?
Yes, they're an interesting one, Swansea. I think that I would be a little bit of a trend up, but Swansea generally tend to have quite a little bit of churn in terms of their squad changing over each summer, really. I do think that there are quite a few saleable assets in that team at the moment, so it will be interesting to see how they're sort of shaping up going into next season. I do think they'll be interesting. Perot, Grimes is always someone who's, linked away with moves as well. Cabango in there and some of the other players, but it does feel like the goals have been a little bit more sort of shared around in this second portion of the season with sort of Obafemi coming into form now and things like that, where at the start of the season it felt like they were having 90% possession. They were sort of totally reliant on Perot hitting it in from unlikely angles. So and Patterson as well, yeah, exactly. So it does feel like they are building towards something, albeit it is sort of just a bit of a jumble of inconsistency at this point in time. But the process is clear to see there, and I would be slightly more positive on Swansea's chances for next season, albeit I'm not quite sure if they're there at that point where they were with Cooper to properly be sort of brushing it with the rest of the top six.
No, agreed. Funnily enough, it's Swansea and then Cardiff, and they're playing each other this weekend as well. What do you think about Cardiff then, Ryan? Because we think there's not very many pennies in the bank account from what we hear, and they've gone to Steve Morrison, he's done well. He's turned it around. I dare say, and I'm a big Steve Morrison fan, I dare say from a low base after McCarthy, and I feel that they were going to move up anyway. But I like the way he's putting the young players, and it starts to look like his team now. How hard is it going to be for him next season to keep that up, Ryan?
Very hard. I think Cardiff are in a much worse position than Swansea, purely because of the squad that they've got at the moment. There are so many players who are out of contract, and they need to get rid of some of these high earners because of the financial limitations that you mentioned before. I've been looking at the Cardiff Twitter accounts who have been talking about who's staying and going this summer. And you've got so many players who are out of contracts. Big names as well, like Morrison, for example, Sean Morrison, who's been there for many years, the likes of Marlon Pack as well. I think is Will Volks out of contract as well, Bakuna. There's a lot of players who are out of contract, essentially. So there's going to be a lot of turnover at Cardiff this summer for players, and it's going to be very, very interesting to see how they do. Is worth saying, one of the main reasons why they've got out of any fears of a relegation battle is because of the business they did in January. The likes of Cody Drame, Tommy Doyle, Jordan Hugill, Ikpeazu. A lot of those players might not be there next summer, though. So that's an issue in itself. So if they lose all those loan players, obviously they'll probably bring some in. They've got a completely chopped up squad to what it is now. And they've got a manager in Steve Morrison who I'm not completely convinced by yet. I like what he's trying to do in terms of changing the style of play. I like that he's giving young players a chance, but I'm not as sold on him as a lot of Cardiff fans are. So there's a lot of question marks about Cardiff heading into next season. They have got a lot of young talent, and I think that's going to be the basis for any success they have next season. The likes of Ruben Carwell, Isaac Davies, fabulous young players. And they're going to be really important to him next season. But I've got a bit of concern about Cardiff and where they're heading into next season.
No, agreed. And I wonder how important it's going to be in the future that they've bedded these young players in this season, so they're kind of ready to go. That might be a big feather in their cap going into next season. Bristol City appear next in the table, Ben. And again, look, we don't know in terms of accounts and in terms of EFL next season, and it's very easy to pull headlines and numbers that we don't know out. But we know that there are discussions, and we know that I don't know what they'll land on, and there's lots of accountants doing lots of jiggery pokery. What can be attributed to COVID in terms of the losses and whatnot, but I'm a little bit worried about Bristol City next season. I have to say, I think the club was trending up really, really nicely, and a couple of bad transfer windows after lots of very good ones, and then COVID as well. And not entirely sold on Nigel Pearson. He only seems a comeback defeat or a last-minute goal away from another very fearsome post-match press conference. Where are we with this Bristol City project? Where we should say again, same as Cardiff, some really good young players there, though.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because I do agree with a lot of what you've just said on Bristol City. Then it does feel like they are sort of on the knife edge with going either way next season. I think what's difficult with going into Bristol City at the moment is sort of managing those expectations as well, because of what, some players in this squad are capable of. They do have those saleable assets who we spoke about before. They do have, similar to Cardiff, some good youngsters coming through at the moment. Tanner's played a bit more this season, Pring, Hando Masengo, Semenyo seems to have upped his output from last season as well. And then Andy Vyman has absolutely exploded, who's, on his way to 20 goals now. And on his way to double figures in both goals and assists, which is really love a bit of a double, which is really impressive. But it does feel from the outside looking in that Bristol City probably are one of those clubs that are trending downwards at the moment. And with like you say, the sort of uncertainty around Pearson around a lot of the time, the inconsistency that sort of bounced around this season. If they do lose a couple players from that spine over the summer and they've not got the resources to properly replace them, I would be a little bit concerned there, because it does feel like a little bit of chaos could be on the way for Bristol City, perhaps.
Agreed. Speaking of chaos, Ryan, we've got Birmingham next, who we think are far enough away from frankly, they're 14 points clear. So I'm not exactly sticking my neck on the line by saying that. But Ryan, I don't know how you feel, if you agree with me about this. A few times this season, I've thought, right, Lee Bowyer is sorting this thing out, and I can see what he's doing. And if he sticks with this, I think they're gonna be all right. And then it gets a bit worse, and then it feels like he has to then go and sort it out again. And I don't know whether it's been a bit of a wasted opportunity this season. I watched them earlier, and we're talking first 6 weeks, and Chong was like awesome, and they were playing the 3-5-2 and whatnot. And you thought, okay, I wonder if this has got some legs. But I think we're back to 19th place, and where's this going, Ryan?
Who knows? That's the best way to put it. It is worth pointing out, actually, some of the teams that we've mentioned, and the next team we'll mention as well, they in normal seasons, they'd all be involved in relegation battles. Last season, around 40 points, early 40s, was relegation battle territory. And they're all quite fortunate, really, that there are 4 teams who have had either points deductions or have been very poor this season. And Birmingham are certainly one of those sides. I thought this was going to be the season that they start making progression away from the relegation battle, but it doesn't seem like they're shifting away from it anytime soon. And I feel like next season will be exactly the same once again. They're one of those teams, aren't they, who have looked like they could be heading down eventually. And I fear next season may very well be that season. I do like Lee Bowyer as a manager. I think he's a good manager. I don't think he's great, but I think he's good at championship level. But he has been dealt a very tough hand this season as well, because you've got to remember 3 of their best players this season, or 4 even, if you count Dion Sanderson as well, in even Sarkic, Chong, Riley McGree, all of them on loan. All of them have suffered injuries or have been recalled from their loans. So that's really hurt them. And then the injuries that they've had, they've ended up having to play 2 fullbacks at centre back and a wing back playing at left back. So there's a lot of issues there with the squad depth, and I don't think that's going to get any better over the summer unless the owners start forking out a lot of money. But I don't see that happening, because the owners seem less and less interested with the club, and that's not getting any better when the fans are obviously protesting them against them. Not saying the fans shouldn't protest them against them, but that's where it's at with Birmingham now. So I'm very concerned about Birmingham. You've got players out of contract this summer as well. Christian Pedersen, a very, very consistent player for them over the last 3 or 4 seasons. Jeremy Baylor, decent enough championship.
Great side in that spin, hasn't it? Yeah.
Jukovic is out of contract as well. Hasn't been featuring that much for this season, but has been a leader in the dressing room. So, yeah, a lot of concern for Birmingham. And I think right now, if you asked me if I had to earmark a team to be in danger of going down next season, I think Birmingham would definitely be one of those sides.
Yeah, I'm just playing out your prophecy, and it almost feels like if we're 10 games in next season and they're below a point per game, and the atmosphere is still a little bit tetchy, that they need to get off to a good start next season. I know that's stating the bleeding obvious. Everyone wants to get off to a good start, but the opposite may not play well at St Andrews, I'd have thought. Finally, then, the last team, Ben, that we think is definitely going to be in the Championship next season is Hull. And you can answer what you like for this, because it's the first year under a new ownership. We don't feel we know a hell of a lot about Arveladze. Will Keane Lewis Potter be there? Players in there, Longman, and Fleming looks good as well, the young guy in Greaves. But what will the transfer window in the summer look like? Are the Turkish guys, the higher ups, now gonna have a push at this?
Yeah, this one could really go either way next season for Hull. I do think that they will be much better off for this season, and we've seen it in the past. Teams newly promoted from League One. Hull have been wildly inconsistent this season, but this was all about survival, really. And we've seen in the past how teams have kicked on in their second year. And to be honest, I think that even if we go back to the January window, I know that a lot of the deals they made haven't really hit like we thought they might, with, Force coming in, Regan Slater, Liam Walsh on that loan deal as well, and a couple of others. But if they're willing to show a similar sort of ambition in the summer, target sort of similar players, and nail a few down on permanent deals, then I'd be fairly positive on Hull's chances of kicking on a little bit next season. I think that given their current situation with the ownership and things like that, having this year of experience in the Championship, they'll probably be a little bit better suited to the three that are coming up from League One immediately. I think they've already got an edge on some of the other sides who are going to be up in the Championship next season as well. So, yeah, with the takeover, this could literally go either way, but I would be a little bit more positive on Hull's chances compared to some of the others that they're around at the moment, I think.
You're right. It's definitely a totally different scene going into next season than it was at the start of this season. There is our look at all of those teams that right now, as of this moment in time, we consider are probably going to be in the Championship next season. And I'm sure the two guys alongside me will join anyone who makes a playoff dash from those we've talked about. And we will be there with the standing ovation if they do. So look, if you support any of those teams, please, well, first of all, give this video a like on YouTube and get your comments in. Let us know what you think and what next season sort of looks like. I dare say, boys, if we do this again in 4 games' time, we will be able to add, or will we even? It could still be that time. Maybe another 2 or 3 teams into the mix. But hey, this could go to the wire this season. Every week, you can find Ryan over at the Second Tier Podcast. Tell us about it, Ryan.
It's a podcast about Championship football.
It's the worst plug I've ever heard.
Yeah. It's me and Justin, who will feature on the show in the near future as well. We talk about the Championship every week. Well, twice a week, actually. Preview each week. Look back on all the games. Every Sunday, listen in. It's on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify as well.
Get involved, check it out. And the equally as good as Ryan, Ben HD, tell us about a YouTube channel.
Yeah, everything Ben HD for all things Championship related, really. Getting into the business end of the season now, which is a cliche I always love to use. But yeah, getting interesting.
Yeah, but it's perfect though, isn't it? It's the business end of the season. And of course, please do head over and you can see my work on the Benjamin Bloom Football channel. Thank you everybody for watching. Get your comments in, hit the like button, and we will see you again next week for Championship 365.